The watermelons the local farmers grew were rotting on the vine, a surplus no one would buy. So I decided to help out, buying the unsellable crop to feed my hogs and live streaming it to show my subscribers how I was trying to reduce waste and help my neighbors. But one young man, his eyes red with fury, blocked my truck as I was leaving the fields. "My family has been growing melons for 3 generations," he choked out. "And they've always been for people to eat. Now you're feeding them to pigs. You're wasting food. You're spitting on our hard work, our blood, sweat, and tears." His fists were clenched, his voice trembling with rage. I killed the engine and got out of the truck, facing him with a calm I didn't feel. I offered a sincere apology. "You've made your point," I said. "You're right. I won't be buying any more watermelons from this town." Then I got back in my truck and drove off, heading straight for the next town over, Ridgeview, where I signed a long-term contract with their farmers that same afternoon. It wasn't until the rains came, a steady, miserable downpour that lasted for 2 solid weeks, that they understood. When the watermelons in their fields, saturated and swollen, began to split open and decay in the mud, they remembered my offer. The same farmers who had stood behind the young man, nodding in agreement, now showed up at the gate of my farm, blocking the entrance with their cracked, rotting melons. "You promised you'd buy our crop," they yelled. "What happened to keeping your word?" When Ethan Vance stormed onto my farm, I was in the middle of a live stream, tossing sliced watermelon into the feeding troughs. "What do you think you're doing?" he yelled, his chest heaving. "These are perfectly good melons. You're feeding them to pigs." I looked at the kid who had just barged in, trying to keep my patience. "Easy there, son. Settle down," I said calmly. "Watermelon is a common supplement for hogs. It's full of water, helps with hydration. This year's harvest was a bumper crop, way too much for the market to absorb. If I don't buy them, they're just going to rot in your fields." The live chat on my stream was scrolling fast, and most people were on my side. Who is this guy? Clearly has no idea what he's talking about. The farmer is doing a good thing, better than letting it all go to waste. Seeing no one was taking his side, Ethan's face went from flushed red to a pale, tight-lipped fury. "Excuses? All just excuses," he screamed. "You people don't get it." With a sudden roar, he grabbed a pitchfork leaning against a fence and charged toward the pig pens. "Get away from them. Don't you dare waste my melons." He waved the pitchfork wildly, scattering the terrified hogs. Seeing them squeal and run, a triumphant, crazed grin spread across his face. "Yeah, you run, you filthy animals. Owned by a filthy man. You touch my family's legacy, and I'll turn you all into bacon myself." Just as he lunged, the tines of the fork pointed at one of my prize sows. I tackled him, wrestling the weapon from his grasp. I stared at his face, twisted with a fanatic excitement. "Listen to me and look around," I said, my voice low and hard. "This is my farm. These watermelons? I bought and paid for them with my own money. What I do with them is my business." "Bullshit. That's the sweat from our brows you're feeding to those things." He struggled against my grip, his face burning with humiliation, but he couldn't break free. Finally, he gave up, spitting one last threat before turning and running off. "You just wait. This isn't over." My live stream was still running, and thousands of people were watching. My temper was boiling, but I forced it down. "All right, everyone, let's just calm down," I said to the camera. The young man was just emotional. "It's understandable. I'll cover any damages myself. As far as I'm concerned, this is over. I won't be pressing charges." I tried to come off as magnanimous and reasonable, and the chat filled with praise for my handling of the situation. I figured it was best to let it go. He was just a hot-headed kid, and a little money lost was better than a drawn-out fight. I never imagined my restraint would be met with such a calculated escalation. The next morning, my farm was surrounded by news vans and reporters with cameras. "Mr. Miller, do you have any comment on the allegations being made against you online?" I was completely blindsided. I pulled out my phone and saw that I was trending on Twitter. A video Ethan had edited overnight had gone viral. He'd cut out his entire rampage, leaving only the footage of me tossing watermelons to the pigs. He'd even laid a sorrowful, instrumental track over it, complete with his own tearful voiceover narration. "Unscrupulous businessman wastes food, tramples on the dignity of the American farmer." But the slander that followed was far worse. In the video's description, he claimed, with no evidence, that my farm was a cesspool of filth. He wrote that I raised sick pigs pumped full of hormones and antibiotics, selling the tainted meat to shady, back-alley butchers. In the comments section, he'd even posted a deepfake video. In it, my likeness was shown standing behind a hog, my pants around my ankles. The caption read, "No wonder he's so worried about his pigs. They're all he has to keep him warm at night." The internet trolls went into a frenzy. OMG, he does that to pigs? This guy's a total psycho. Worse than that, he sells the pigs he screws at night to us during the day. Puke. This is depraved. He's a menace to society. The authorities need to shut him down now. I called Ethan's number. The video you posted is slander and commercial defamation. The view count is high enough to be a criminal offense. A sneer came through the phone. Who are you trying to scare? You deserve it. That's what you get for wasting food. I'm giving you 24 hours to take it down and issue a public apology. Or else. Or else what? He cut me off, his tone arrogant. Let me tell you something. Guys like you, these corporate parasites, you deserve to be exposed. I'm doing God's work here. He slammed the phone down. Fine. If he wanted to play it that way, I'd give him enough rope to hang himself. Once his lies reached the level of a felony, we'd see who was crying for mercy. That night, my live stream barely lasted 3 minutes before it was flooded with tens of thousands of viewers. The chat flew by in an unreadable blur of hate. Go to hell, you soulless monster. You must be broke to make money this disgusting. Hope your kids get what you deserve. People who waste food should rot in hell. Everyone, report this channel. We can't let him insult the hard work of our farmers. He's spitting on them. I tried to explain, but my voice was drowned in a tidal wave of insults. Everybody, just listen to me. That's not what happened. This live stream has been suspended for violating community guidelines. The screen went black. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. The next day, a joint task force from the Department of Agriculture, the county health inspector, and the EPA showed up at my gate. I laid out all my permits, licenses, and records on a table for them to see. They inspected everything from my equipment to my staff certifications, from fire safety to waste disposal. They spent 3 days and 3 nights crawling over every inch of my farm, and they couldn't find a single violation. "Mr. Miller, you run a tight ship here," the lead investigator said, clapping me on the shoulder. "As for all that stuff online, the truth will come out." After seeing them off, I drove straight to the town's community hall to see Mr. Hemlock, the de facto town leader. The old man was sitting on the porch, smoking a cigarette, and didn't even look up as I approached. "Mr. Hemlock," I started, "you need to do something about this situation with Ethan." "Do something? What am I supposed to do?" he said, blowing a smoke ring. "You said you were going to buy melons to feed pigs. You never said anything about live streaming it. This has blown up so big the mayor's office has been calling me nonstop." He took a long drag from his cigarette. "Tell you what, you listen to me. Raise your buying price to $1 a pound, and I'll make this whole thing go away for you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Just 2 weeks ago, he was the one leading the farmers to block my truck, his eyes wet with tears. "Please, Mr. Miller, you gotta help us," he'd begged. "The melons are about to rot in the fields." My heart had gone out to them. Not only did I agree to buy the entire surplus, but I also offered them 10 cents more per pound than the going rate. And now, this was how he was acting? I frowned, studying him. Then I noticed a letter half-tucked under a planter on the table. The sloppy, angry handwriting was unmistakably Ethan's. A cold laugh escaped my lips. So that was it. Greed is a timeless motivator. In that case, my voice turned to ice. I won't be buying any more of your town's watermelons. Hearing this, Mr. Hemlock dropped all pretense. "No, we have a contract. You can't just back out," he snapped. "If you try to break it, I'll sue you for everything you've got. You'll be signing this whole farm over to us." I stared at his ungrateful face and finally understood. For some people, no amount of help is ever enough. You're just feeding a stray that will bite you the second you stop. I pulled out my copy of the contract and pointed to a specific clause. The contract clearly states that if either party acts in bad faith or violates the spirit of the agreement, the other party has the right to terminate it immediately. It was your people who first refused to sell to me. Your people who slander my business. You broke the contract first. I'm not suing you for damages, which I should. Consider that my final act of goodwill. He shot up from his chair, the veins in his neck bulging. I don't care. You were the one who offered to help us with our surplus. You can't just walk away now. If you try to drive that truck out of here empty today, I'll... Mr. Hemlock, don't waste your breath on him. A familiar voice cut through the air. Ethan strode onto the porch, a crowd of farmers trailing behind him. He put a hand on the old man's shoulder, then turned his blazing eyes on the crowd. Friends, neighbors, we can't let ourselves be strangled by middlemen like him for the rest of our lives. He pointed in the direction of the city. I've already done my research. In Northwood, good watermelons are selling for $2.50 a pound. He's buying from us for a quarter and calling it a favor. The man has no conscience. I listened to his passionate, misguided speech, a sense of the absurd washing over me. The melons in the fancy grocery stores in the city, the ones displayed under bright lights, were specialty breeds, Crimson Sweets sugar babies. They were the result of years of agricultural science, thin-rind and bred for maximum sweetness. I looked at the standard-grade field melons rotting in their fields, the same ones my hogs were already getting picky about. The gap in quality, branding, and logistics was something this idealistic young man couldn't possibly comprehend. Ethan's voice grew louder, feeding on the crowd's energy. I looked into it. It'll cost $50,000 to open our own fruit stand in the city. If you're all with me, we can pool our money, open our own place, and sell our melons direct. Every family here will get rich. The farmer's eyes lit up. Ethan's right. We're done being exploited. Our own store. We'll make a fortune. That miller is a real piece of work, telling us our melons are only fit for pigs. He was just trying to lowball us. $50,000, split among the families, would eat up most of their earnings for the year. But faced with the promise of getting rich, they completely ignored the risk. They looked at Ethan like he was their savior. When their gaze turned back to me, it was filled with the fury and hatred of people who believed they'd been betrayed. You damn cheat. You played us for fools. Get him. Let's make him pay us back the money he stole from us. A few of the bigger guys, riled up by the mob, closed in on me, their eyes bloodshot. Fists flew through the air. I instinctively covered my head as blows rained down on my ribs and back, each impact sending a searing flash of pain through me. I tasted the metallic tang of blood in my mouth. Curled on the ground, a chilling realization washed over me. The memory of them begging me to help, their faces etched with desperation, now felt like a sick joke. My compassion, my goodwill, it had all been thrown back in my face. Stop it. All of you back off. A powerful voice boomed through the crowd. It was Dale Peterson, the head of the neighboring Ridgeview community, striding toward us. Mr. Miller is a valued partner of ours, he declared, his eyes flashing. Anyone who lays another hand on him will have to answer to Ridgeview. His presence was commanding, and the men who had been beating me shuffled back, abashed. Ethan, furious at the interruption, confronted him. Dale, don't let him fool you. Give me your town's melons, too. We can all get rich together. Dale Peterson looked at Ethan and slowly shook his head. Ethan, it's good for a young man to have ambition. I'll give you that. But we're farmers. We look for stability for a steady hand. We're not in the business of chasing get-rich-quick schemes. He turned to me, his expression full of apology and sincerity. Mr. Miller, I'm sorry you had to go through this. You know the quality of our melons. They may not be gourmet, but they're honest-to-goodness clean produce. We'll sell them to you at the lowest market rate, and we'll split the cost of transport. Are you still willing to do business with us? I wiped my mouth, the taste of blood still lingering. I looked at Dale's earnest, weathered face, then back at Ethan's defiant glare. It was a risk. I've been burned once already, but I was willing to bet that not every farmer was an ungrateful backstabber. I said, spitting out a mouthful of bloody saliva. Let's sign a contract right now. Ethan scoffed from the sidelines. Fine, Dale. Throw away a golden opportunity. Go ahead and stick with this crook. But when our store is open and we're raking in cash, don't come crying to me. I ignored his taunts and went to my truck to get a blank contract. Dale took the pen, signed his name with a steady hand, and pressed his thumbprint onto the paper in red ink. Don't you worry, Mr. Miller. We'll set aside the best of the crop for you, Dale said, a relieved and trustworthy smile spreading across his face. I took the contract and tucked it away safely. As I walked back to my truck, I could still hear Ethan loudly outlining his grand business empire to the captivated Harmony Creek farmers. I just smirked. I hoped he had that same energy when he had to actually run a business. 4. When I got home, the suspension on my livestream account had been lifted. I went live. The buzz from the past few days had died down. The internet mob that had been drawn in by the viral drama had moved on, and the usernames left in the chat were mostly familiar ones. The frantic scrolling was gone, replaced by the usual friendly banter. He's back. Good to see you're okay, man. I knew that video was BS. Stayed subscribed because I trusted you. Should never have tried to help those folks in the first place. No good deed goes unpunished. Seeing the familiar names and their words of support, the frustration and cold anger I'd been feeling for days finally started to thaw. Not everyone was a wolf. Feeling a little better, I scrolled through my local social media feed. A newly posted video caught my eye. The title was splashy. Hometown hero helps farmers realize their dream. Grand opening of the Harmony Creek fruit stand. In the video, a beaming Ethan Vance stood in front of a brand new, brightly decorated storefront. Behind him were mountains of watermelons from his town. The other farmers stood with him, their faces glowing with a premature sense of victory. He spoke directly to the camera. We're here to break the monopoly of the corporate middlemen, pass the savings on to the consumer, and finally get the farmers their fair share. Our melons are top quality, and we're selling them for just $1.50 a pound. The comment section was full of praise, hailing him as a savior of the family farm and a hero fighting against corporate greed. I closed the video and just chuckled. His ideals were admirable, but reality was about to give him a very harsh lesson. The following weeks passed uneventfully. My partnership with Dale Peterson and the Ridgeview farmers was smooth. Their melons were of consistent quality, and deliveries were always on time. They were honest, hardworking people who stuck to the terms of our contract. My farm was running better than ever, especially without the drama from Harmony Creek. Occasionally, I'd get updates about Ethan's venture from Dale. The Dream Melon Stand, as they called it, had an initial burst of success. The story of helping the local farmer and cutting out the middleman drew in a lot of sympathetic customers. Ethan even posted a few more videos, smugly alluding to how the crooked businessman had been pushed out by the market. But the success was short-lived. Within a month, the cracks started to show. First, there was the quality. Their old variety field melons simply couldn't compete with the sweeter, more popular breeds on the market. Once the novelty wore off, repeat business was almost non-existent. Then came the issues of management and waste. They had no professional storage or refrigeration, and the rate of spoilage was staggering. Ethan, with no marketing experience, kept changing the prices, one day selling high to reflect the value of their labor, the next day slashing prices for a clearance sale. It was chaos. But most importantly, they had completely overlooked the most critical element: a stable distribution channel and a reliable customer base. A single, small storefront trying to sell the entire output of a whole town's harvest was a fool's errand. Soon, the store was overflowing with unsold, aging watermelons. Yet, even as his dream crumbled, Ethan refused to admit defeat. It wasn't long before Mr. Hemlock showed up at my farm again. The arrogant swagger was gone. He looked like a wilted plant, his face etched with a desperate, pleading smile. In his hand, he carried a bottle of expensive bourbon. "Mr. Miller," he said, his voice raspy. "Busy day." I just looked at him, saying nothing. The spot on my ribs where I'd been kicked still ached when I took a deep breath. He placed the bourbon on a nearby table. "Look, we were wrong before," he mumbled. "Ethan's young and foolish, and we old folks got carried away. You're a bigger man than us. Please, don't hold it against us." I sighed. "Mr. Hemlock, just say what you came to say." He latched onto my words like a drowning man grabbing a rope. "It's the melons. We still have so many melons in the fields, and they're about to overripen. The store can't sell them, and the ones we have are starting to rot. Please, Mr. Miller, just do us this one favor. Buy one more batch. Just one. You can name the price. 20 cents a pound. Hell, 10 cents. We'll take it." Seeing the tears welling up in his eyes, I felt a flicker of pity. The melons, after all, weren't to blame. They represented a year of labor for those families. I poured him a glass of water, my tone softening slightly. Mr. Hemlock, it's not that I don't want to buy them. You see the situation. The problem isn't the price. It's the whole approach. Ethan's store was never going to be able to support your entire town's harvest. How much of that 50,000 you all scraped together is left? How much longer can you sustain the losses? The old man's lips trembled, but he couldn't form a word. I continued, you can still cut your losses. You need to talk some sense into Ethan. Sell the storefront, or at least pivot to selling a smaller amount of only the best produce. Be realistic about what you can manage. As for the rest of the melons, try selling them to local flea markets or smaller vendors. Whatever you can get is better than letting them all rot. A glimmer of hope appeared in Mr. Hemlock's tired eyes. Yes. I'll go tell Ethan right now. You're a smart man, Mr. Miller. You see things clearly. However, I had clearly overestimated Ethan's capacity for reason. When Mr. Hemlock relayed my advice, Ethan flew into a rage. He threw the old man out, calling him a senile coward who'd been on his knees so long he forgot how to stand. He even ranted that I was a vulture and a snake shedding crocodile tears, jealous of their success and trying to swoop in to exploit their victory. Hearing that, I was done. Some people you can't wake up because they're determined to live in the heroic tragedy they've written for themselves. With his storefront failing, Ethan finally turned to the internet. Gritting his teeth, he used the last of their pooled money to order a massive batch of custom-printed, fancy boxes branded with slogans like Farm Fresh Dreams and Support Local Harvest. He then signed up for a citywide delivery app. This is our last chance, he proclaimed in a new video. We're going to bring the most affordable watermelons to everyone in Northwood. Support us. The boxes were beautiful, far more impressive than the melons they contained. Once he was live on the delivery platform, he burned through the last of his cash on promotions. Buy one, get one, massive coupons, new customer discounts. After all was said and done, a melon that cost $1.50 in the store was being delivered to people's doors for less than 80 cents, and he was still losing money on the box and the delivery fee. This time, even some of the farmers who had initially supported him started to have doubts. This wasn't selling melons. This was setting money on fire. A few of them went to Ethan, begging him to stop the suicidal promotions. You don't understand. Ethan screamed at them, his eyes wild. This is how you capture the market. It's a marketing strategy. You have to spend money to make money. Once we build our brand and get a loyal customer base, we'll be rolling in profit. He was convinced that if the price was low enough, people would buy. And if people bought, his business would be saved. The delivery service limped along for 2 weeks. It attracted a few bargain hunters, but the expensive packaging and shocking spoilage rate meant every single order lost money. And once the coupon clippers got their cheap melon and realized it was nothing special, they never ordered again. The expected word-of-mouth explosion and loyal customer base never materialized. The money in their bank account evaporated like ice in the summer sun. At the end of the month, when the delivery platforms sent their payout, the meager revenue wasn't even enough to cover the platform's commission and the delivery driver fees. Then, the eviction notice for the storefront arrived. Ethan didn't have a penny left. The store was forced to close. And that's when the rains began. The sky turned a permanent, bruised gray, and a fine, persistent drizzle started to fall. It didn't stop for days. Standing under the eaves of my barn, watching the downpour, I knew the real test for Harmony Creek was just beginning. Their melons, the ones still in the fields, couldn't handle this kind of sustained rain. The soil would become saturated, the rinds would weaken, and they would split. Sure enough, when Dale came by to make a delivery, he brought the news. Heard their melons in the fields are starting to crack open, he said, his face grim. A huge loss. Ethan's store is gone, and now the rest of the crop is ruined. I nodded but said nothing. This was the path they chose. They had to own the consequences. The rain fell on and off for 2 weeks. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and decay. One morning, the rain finally let up, but the sky remained heavy and dark. I was getting ready to head to Ridgeview for a new shipment when a loud, frantic banging started at my main gate. Open up. Miller, get out here. You two-faced liar. Come out and face us. I frowned and signaled for one of my workers to open the gate. Outside stood a grim, furious crowd of farmers from Harmony Creek, led by Ethan. They were all caked in mud, their faces masks of desperation and rage. And piled at their feet and in their hands were their ruined watermelons, cracked, rotting, and pathetic. The blood, sweat, and tears they had spoken of with such pride was now just a pile of garbage in the mud. Mr. Hemlock pushed to the front, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Miller, you promised you'd buy our melons. How would you go back on your word? Look at this," he shrieked, his voice raw. "Look at it. It's all ruined. How are we supposed to live?" Ethan stood behind him, his eyes redder than ever. But this time, it wasn't prideful anger. It was the vicious, cornered rage of a man who had lost everything and needed someone to blame. He just stared at me, his jaw clenched. I looked at the crowd of broken people and felt only a profound sense of pity. "Our agreement ended a long time ago," I said, my voice steady. "As for your melons, I'm sorry for your loss, but the rain is what ruined them. Your failing business model is what left them in the fields. The choices you made are what led you here. What does any of that have to do with me?" The farmers stared back, a flicker of confusion in their eyes, quickly replaced by a deeper panic and disbelief. "You're lying," one of them shouted, holding up a split melon. "You're just happy to see us fail. You went back on your word. Yeah, by not buying our melons, you drove us into the ground. You're going to buy them today, or we're not leaving." I stood my ground as their accusations, mixed with rain and mud, flew at me. "Let's be clear," I said, my voice rising to cut through their noise. "It was you, following Ethan, who came to my farm, threatened my animals, and slandered my name. It was you who attacked me. We had a signed contract, and you chose to break it. So why, exactly, do you think you have any right to make demands of me now?" The crowd fell silent for a moment. Ethan shoved his way to the front. "Don't listen to his fancy words. If you hadn't tried to lowball us in the first place, we never would have had to open our own store. If you hadn't abandoned us, we wouldn't be in this mess. This is all your fault." "Lowball you?" I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "The market rate was 20 cents a pound, if you were lucky. I offered you a quarter, out of goodwill, and paid for the transport. And you call me a crook? Your melons are an old variety the market doesn't want." Ethan had a fantasy about selling them for a fortune in the city. And when that fantasy blew up, you decided I was the one to blame. My eyes swept over their faces, some angry, some numb, some terrified, and finally landed on Mr. Hemlock. "Mr. Hemlock, you're the oldest one here. You've seen the most. I want you to look me in the eye and tell me, honestly, if from the very beginning I ever did a single thing to wrong the people of Harmony Creek." The old man's lips moved, but no words came out. His face turned ashen, and he looked down at the ground in shame. "And the rest of you," I said, turning to the crowd. "When you were pooling your life savings to give to Ethan, you were all dreaming of getting rich, weren't you? Now the money's gone, your crop is ruined, and instead of trying to salvage what's left, you come back here to threaten me? Do you think I'm your personal ATM?" Some of them shifted their feet and avoided my gaze, but a few remained defiant. "We don't care about all that. All we know is our melons are ruined, and you refuse to buy them. That makes you wrong. That's right. You owe us an explanation." An explanation? The last bit of sympathy I had for them, born from shared life of working the land, finally vanished. "Phoenix, you want an explanation? I'll give you one." I walked back to my office and returned with a folder. It contained the original contract and printouts of the defamatory posts they had made. I threw the folder onto the muddy ground in front of them. "Look at it. You signed that contract voluntarily, and you broke it voluntarily. And look at these. This is a record of what you did. The lies, the threats, the violence. My live stream was suspended, my farm was investigated by 3 different government agencies, and my ribs still hurt when I breathe. I haven't even come after you for my damages." I pulled out my phone, dialed 911, and put on speaker. "Yes, hello. I'd like to report crime. There's a large, hostile group of people trespassing on my property, blocking my entrance, and I feel my safety is being threatened. I need police assistance immediately." The calm, professional voice of the dispatcher echoed from the phone, and it was like a bucket of ice water had been thrown over the crowd. The anger on their faces froze, then melted into panic. "You call the cops," Mr. Hemlock whispered, his voice trembling. "What did you expect?" I said, hanging up. that I'd wait for you to trash my farm again. Or wait for Ethan to film another video claiming I'd pushed you to the brink of starvation. I pointed down the road, where the faint flashing of red and blue lights was just becoming visible. The sheriff's department will be here any minute. Those rotten watermelons you're holding. That's evidence. The previous defamation, commercial damages, trespassing, and assault, plus today's mob intimidation. I wonder if that's enough to press charges. Enough for a few of you to see the inside of a cell. You might want to think about that. A few people in the back started to quietly drop their melons and back away. Let's go, get out of here. He called the cops, man, let's run. The crowd that had been so aggressive just moments before dissolved into a panicked mob, scattering in all directions. Ethan started to shout something, but Mr. Hemlock and a few other men grabbed him, dragging him away into the gray morning. The sheriff's deputies arrived. I explained the situation and showed them my evidence. They took a report, documented the scene, and told me to call if there were any more disturbances. The drama, for now, was over. The rain started again, a light drizzle washing away the mud and watermelon pulp from my driveway. Dale's truck pulled up then. He got out, sighed, and didn't ask any questions. He just motioned for his crew to start loading the new shipment. All set for you, Mr. Miller. Picked out the best ones, just like always. I nodded. Thanks, Dale. I appreciate it. I got into the passenger seat, and we drove away from the farm. In the rearview mirror, the sky over Harmony Creek was still dark and oppressive. But ahead of us, in the direction of Ridgeview, a small break in the clouds seemed to be letting a little light through. Choices and consequences. They always go hand in hand. My compassion had been misplaced, rewarded with betrayal. But my partnership with the honest, hardworking folks of Ridgeview showed a clear and steady path forward. Some people aren't worth helping, and some roads you have to walk alone. The arrival of the sheriff's deputies was a cold shock of reality. It finally dawned on some of them that I was no longer a pushover they could intimidate. I thought that after the threat of legal action, Ethan would finally back down. But I had underestimated the depths of his delusion. A few days later, Dale told me what was happening. Ethan hadn't organized the remaining farmers to salvage what was left of the crop. He hadn't tried to cut his losses. Instead, he had made a decision that left everyone speechless. He was going to sue me. He's been taking pictures of the rotten melons, filming videos of farmers crying about their losses. He's going to the press, saying you committed fraud and exploited poor farmers. Dale looked pale as he told me, a deep-seated fear in his eyes. That boy. How can he be so stubborn, so reckless? You don't just throw accusations like that around. I listened, and all I felt was a cold, detached sense of the absurd. He was about to drag himself and his entire town into an even deeper hole. Let him, I told Dale. He chose this path. He has to see it through to the end. This time, no one can save him from himself. I instructed Dale and my own workers to be extra vigilant, to keep a close watch on the farm and the transport trucks. Given Ethan's state of mind, I wouldn't put it past him to do something even more extreme. Sure enough, a few days later, an anonymous post appeared on a small, local online forum. The headline was pure clickbait, a cry for justice. Corrupt businessman destroys local farm. Where is the outrage? The post was a complete distortion of the facts, painting me as a predatory villain who exploited the innocent. It got a few angry comments from people who didn't know the full story, but it wasn't long before users who had been following the situation started pointing out the inconsistencies. Where's the contract? You say he lowballed you, but where's the proof? So, your own business failed, and now you're blaming someone else? That's not how the free market works. This sounds pretty one-sided. I heard you guys were the ones who broke the contract and assaulted him first. Ethan, unable to handle the criticism, started arguing frantically in the comments, his replies becoming more and more unhinged. His pathetic attempt at a smear campaign failed to gain any traction. This online failure seemed to snap the last thread of his sanity. Late one night, the security alarms at my farm blared to life. The night watchman checked the cameras and saw two shadowy figures sneaking around the feed warehouse at the back of the property. They were carrying what looked like gas cans. The watchman hit the floodlights, shouted at them, and called 911. The two figures dropped what they were holding and fled into the darkness. When the deputies arrived, they found 2 plastic containers full of gasoline and a pile of oil-soaked rags. The investigation didn't take long. The 2 trespassers were from Harmony Creek, 2 of Ethan's most loyal followers. Under questioning, they confessed. Ethan had incited them, telling them I had destroyed their town's future and that I needed to be taught a lesson I would never forget. Arson. This was far beyond a business dispute or a civil matter. This was a serious felony. The police acted swiftly, arresting Ethan at his home that same night. As they led him away in handcuffs, he was still screaming about fighting for justice and taking down the corrupt forces. With clear evidence and witness testimony, the case was open and shut. For conspiracy to commit arson, Ethan Vance was finished. The law was coming for him, and this time, there would be no escape. The news hit Harmony Creek like an earthquake. Mr. Hemlock collapsed and had to be taken to the clinic. The rest of the farmers were stunned into silence. Their money was gone, their crop was lost, and now the leader they had put all their faith in was going to prison. A heavy blanket of despair and fear fell over the town. This time, no one came to protest at my gate. There was only the dead silence of regret, hanging in the air over Harmony Creek. They had finally paid the ultimate price for their ignorance, their mob mentality, and their ungratefulness. 10. A few weeks later, the verdict came down. Conspiracy to commit arson, a serious felony. Even though the act wasn't completed, the intent was clear. Ethan was sentenced to 3 years in state prison. The passionate young man with the red-rimmed eyes was now a convicted felon, his pride and foolishness having cost him his freedom. On the day of the sentencing, only Mr. Hemlock and a few other elderly farmers were in the courtroom. They watched, stone-faced, as Ethan was led away by the bailiffs. The old man opened his mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. He just wiped his face with the back of his rough, calloused hand. Later, I heard that the remaining farmers of Harmony Creek, under Mr. Hemlock's quiet guidance, began the slow process of picking up the pieces. They cleared the rotten vines from their fields and planted simple, short-cycle vegetables that were easier to sell. Some of them swallowed their pride and went to the same local vendors they had once scorned, selling off the last of their salvage melons for pennies on the dollar. Life was hard. The town was quiet, filled with unspoken regret. Whenever someone from Ridgeview would drive through, talking about their profitable year and their stable contract with me, the people of Harmony Creek would watch them with a complex mixture of envy, resentment, and, buried deepest of all, a profound and bottomless remorse. Time passed. Another year, another harvest. My farm had expanded, and my partnership with Dale Peterson and Ridgeview was stronger than ever. Following some of my suggestions, they had even started planting some improved melon varieties. They weren't a massive operation, but they were reliable and honest, and we had built a relationship of mutual trust. Dale was always beaming when he saw me. "Thanks to you, our town's doing great," he'd say. "Folks on your live stream saw your hogs eating so well. A bunch of other livestock farmers have started buying feed-grade produce from us. At this rate, we'll all be retiring early." Just last week, he presented me with a plaque that read Community Partner of the Year. In stark contrast was Mr. Hemlock. I saw him standing at the end of my driveway one afternoon. He looked older, but a little healthier, though a deep sadness still clung to him. He was holding a small basket of freshly picked, vibrant red tomatoes. "Mr. Miller," he said, holding the basket out to me, "grew these myself. They're not much, but I wanted you to have them." I took the basket and offered for him to come in and sit for a while. He just shook his head, lingering by the gate. After a long, awkward silence, he finally spoke, his voice low. "Mr. Miller, I know we don't have the right to ask you for anything. Ethan," he sent a message from inside. He said he was wrong. He's sorry for what he did to you and to all of us. He paused, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I just wanted to tell you, we all know now, you were trying to help. It was us. We did this to ourselves. We didn't plant any melons this year. Planted other things. Times are tough, but we'll get by." After he said his piece, it was as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He let out a long sigh and slowly, unsteadily, walked away. Watching his stooped figure recede down the road, the basket of bright red tomatoes in my hand, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Whether Ethan's apology was genuine, or whether the town could truly recover from the lesson they had learned so painfully. Only time would tell. But at the very least, they had finally bowed their once proud heads and faced the bitter reality of the seeds they had sown. As for me, that storm had long since passed. The road ahead was long, and I was content to walk it alongside people worthy of the journey.